I've got my whole podcast equipment stuff here if you need it.
I can hear you okay. So as long as if it sounds good on your end, then we're good to go. Do you use Riverside for your podcast?
I do not. I use Squadcast.
Squadcast. Let's make a note. Are you still producing episodes?
We are producing episodes. In fact, my funeral coach went on hiatus for a little while because I'm moving to Lisa Baue, author, coach, podcaster. And that's in development right now. And I have a book coming out at the end of August. And if you want me to, September 3rd, it launches. So if you want me to talk a little bit about that, I can. I sent something today.
Yeah.
Funeral Women Lead, we're doing a podcast called 4 Women in a Funeral. And
sweet.
It is really cool. It involves Elisa Carr, Melissa Posey-Luce, and Ellen McBrayer.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. How was your turnout yesterday for her? I saw the cocktail hour thing.
35, 40 people.
Awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty nice. Yeah, it was perfect. And so we started this 4 Women in a Funeral podcast back in June because we thought, you got these graveyard shift guys out there.
Yeah, you got a
thing. And I talked to them at I don't know, something ICCFA. I'm like, well, where are your women, guys? I mean, there's 75% women graduating mortuary school, and they're the majority working in our profession. If you really want to attract and get listeners from the women's side, you need to get some women. Oh, we have one we're interviewing. I said, do ya?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had some fun with them, but we decided that was important. And we felt as women that we need to be represented in this profession. So I gathered up a pretty great team. There's lots of other women we'll start interviewing in the future. So I think that's going to be cool too. And we'll bring a lot of women leaders on the podcast to talk about various topics that are of interest to all of the profession, but especially a lot of these young women that we feel need a lot of guidance and mentorship and are reaching out to us and asking us for, how can you help me find a good job? How can you find develop myself further, things like that. So, yeah, it's been pretty important to them.
We hear the stats you just shared. I hear them all the time where it's like 75% of graduates are female. And then anytime I share that stat, you can imagine the next questions everyone says, why? Like, what is it about the profession that's drawing in so many women? Why? How would you answer that?
Well, I would answer from their standpoint. I speak to a great deal of them, especially going to the Professional Women's Conference, those that follow us online, those that we run into at all the different conventions and meetings. And it's a compassionate profession. I know we use that word a lot. Women have great deals of empathy. They're being drawn to it because mostly the majority of them have had some experience with death. And they've either attended funerals, had someone in their life die. I think the pandemic was a huge time in our lives where it attracted women because they saw so much death. And they also saw all the great funeral directors and professionals out there serving families. And as they were thinking of their own careers, because the largest majority we're seeing coming in now are coming in from the Gen Z group. The millennials also comprise a great large number of women, but Gen Z most especially is where the large group is coming in from. And if you look at their life path, they were in late grade school and high school during the pandemic. So as they come out of school looking for a career, they're naturally gravitating and finding out about mortuary school. I see these funeral directors helping people. How can I help people? And that generation of Gen Zers, Curtis, are really ones who want to make a difference in people's lives, as well as the millennials do too. A lot of the younger millennials, very involved in charitable works, volunteering, and they look at funeral service as a mission, as a place where they can make a difference and help others. And that's why we think the majority are women, because women are giving from their hearts, right? As they love to do. And they also now want to use more of their heads and learn how to be licensed professionals as well. Hope that answers that question.
Totally. No, yeah, absolutely does. I guess the only question that leaves for me is like, where are they finding out about it? I guess I mean, I guess to your point on like the COVID, but like, are there other ways where there's just like more awareness for mortuary
We,
school?
you know, if they aren't in touch in a community where they know someone who is in the profession, I see them going online. I mean, let Google be your friend. So they're finding us. They're finding websites. They're finding associations. They're finding Facebook groups. Amazingly enough, there's Instagram, of course, and LinkedIn. So I see quite a few on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about a career change. I'm thinking about funeral service overall. What else can I, what's out there? What can I do? Where can I find resources?" And so we'll send them to those of us that are on there. We'll send them to a variety of associations, especially the National Funeral Directors Association, that can put them in touch with all the mortuary schools in their area, or the ABFSE, which has all the accredited schools. And they want to know about what's mortuary school like. So there's quite a few Facebook groups out there that are for young millennials in funeral service, things like that. And they'll tap into those, and we see the conversations going on there where they're listening and learning and asking questions about apprenticeships and what the pay is. The compensation seems to have some challenges. They're coming in, I think, with expectations of earning more than probably are out there right now in our profession, unless you're in a big city. So there are some challenges of losing them. In 2019, the ABFSC did a study through the mortuary schools. I think about 17 of them were involved. And they are finding that there's some attrition rate challenges. They were pretty low at that point. I think they were around 28%. But here's the deal. Of that 28% that weren't staying 5 years after mortuary school, 28% of those were female. 55% of those were female. So 55.
Okay.
Well,
55% of the 28.
now that's 2019. So what happened in 2020? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the pandemic hits. So we do not know how many more we're losing, but we do know from the ABFSC standpoint that 75% are graduating in 2024. And in some cases,
Wow.
in some classes, I've seen classes of 100% women in some of these schools.
Wow.
Right. So if the attrition rate has changed, which we believe with the Great Resignation, the lack of engagement, Gallup is reporting less than 30%, like 28% engagement in the workplace. If you apply that to funeral service and you apply the 75% ratio to funeral service, who do you think we're losing? We're losing the women as a
Mm-hmm.
majority. They're not sticking. Compensation being a top challenge. I've done some research through my LinkedIn, through Funeral Women Lead as well, and my funeral coaching side. And we're finding professional development is a challenge, barriers to advancement, burnout issues, the need for professional development, the industry culture overall. They're coming in and finding, and we see comments online. It's a good old boys associate, organization. I'll never make my name here. I can't grow myself. There's no way to go up to become a manager and owner. And then a real desire to be part of something that's innovative. And funeral service overall, some challenges,
Yeah.
Curtis. You work with that every day, trying to help funeral homes become more innovative. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to recognize, I think, as a profession, there's some more things to be done. And that's one of the reasons I founded Funeral Women Lead. We know the majority of the women are being challenged. Women have different needs for leadership development, for wellness and burnout training and development in that area as well. And they need mentoring. They're looking for strong mentors, coaches, people to help advance them in the organization. And there's some funeral homes and cemetery companies and cremation companies that do it well, but the majority are finding that most of us do not do it as well as we should. So we're going to work on the women, and we're going to help them hopefully advance because they are the majority. It's a clear niche that we can help with, and we know to save funeral service. And I truly believe this, Curtis. I think the future of this profession, because it is so caregiving and so compassionate, and we have a need to be that more and more every day with the kind of deaths that we're seeing. Um, Suicide rates are up. We're seeing tragedies all over the world. God bless this whole situation that just happened in Texas, losing all these children and the campers and the even the adults. We're seeing loss of life all over the place, but this is a big one. This is hundreds of people. And how do we as a profession better care for those families to sustain our profession long term? I believe the answer is let's train and develop more and more women. They have the compassionate heart, they have the desire, they have the mindset. It's a mission to them, but they need help. They need help, they need training, they need development. And they're finding when they get into the workforce after mortuary school, it's not there as much as they would like to see. So what can we do? So that's why Funeral Women Lead was founded. And we're going to be providing a leadership academy this coming November, a wellness summit as well. And the leadership academy will go all year round. And then we'll have a community of women that will support them during their journey, hopefully throughout their career. That's our goal. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned kind of a couple of times that like the majority or majority, not just coming out of school, but are like the majority of funeral directors working in the profession now. Is it majority female at this point?
No, not okay. Quite yet. It might be on the front lines. NFDA is reporting some data that I studied last year in 2024. They have a 24% female to male ratio in their organization. Of those, I think the percentages have changed a little bit on the ownership side, but they are still only 24% members. And the owners are around 13, a little over 13% in ownership, and management is about 23% of that group. So there's still, if you look at membership wise, it's probably, I'll check with ICCFA. I'm waiting for some data from them. Most of the associations are not able to always tell me exactly how many females they have. And we're kind of studying that to see who has been on their board, who's been on leadership. But it's still the minority in the associations. Now, on the front lines, we don't know. We're doing a little state study at Funeral Women Leads. So we're reaching out to all the states to find out more about the makeup of their state associations to see if they separate male and female by gender. Also to check on leadership, how many have been on their boards, how many have served in a leadership capacity. But that's in development right now. We started that last month. We're a new organization. We just kicked off in March. So we're looking and searching, but we hope to find more and more women. The challenge I think you have, Curtis, and I remember this when I was a young funeral director, you're just working, right? You're working really hard, and you're maybe getting married, and maybe then you're having babies and you're starting a family, or the hours that we put in, whether you're single or not single, there are a lot of hours. You sometimes barely have time to volunteer in your own community, much less get involved in association work. So we are trying to encourage them to do so because I think the associations are out there to help develop them. But if we can't find them there, then we want to find them online. So that's one of the reasons Funeral Women Lead is doing an online leadership academy. We're going to kick off in person in November for one day. So if they can fly in for a day, get kicked off there, be part of their group, we'll have about 15 to 20 women, we hope, by the time enrollment is done. And they will be with their instructor, who is also an LPC, licensed professional counselor, who does coaching and counseling with all genders, but she has her own counseling company. However, we're finding that women that need coaching also need life coaching. It's not just about business, it's also about personal. So we wanted someone who was licensed and professional to help them handle and navigate some of the challenges they're having. Because we are, as women, most of us are emotional beings. It's very natural in our makeup, and that's okay. We're proud of that. We love using our hearts in everything we do. However, sometimes that's challenged when our hearts are hurt or stepped on. And maybe it's affecting our self-confidence and our belief in ourselves. And the ability to speak up and advocate for ourselves and even ask for a raise or can I go to this seminar or webinar or can I go to this conference? So we hope to teach women how to help themselves and be more self-confident. And that's one of the things the Leadership Academy is going to be doing as well.
And is that academy, is that open to, is it for funeral directors only or anyone in the profession?
Any woman who is working in the profession.
Cool.
It could be anywhere from a cremation specialist to a pre-planning specialist to a funeral director to an embalmer. If your job is only embalming versus funeral directing, we don't want to leave any woman out because we believe that together we're better. And the more we can bring women from all diverse areas of our profession together, the better we will be as not just a gender, but as a profession. I go to a lot of these conferences and I hang out with a lot of women and guys too. You guys, we love you guys. We've learned so much from you. Obviously, we're still hanging out. But we're finding at these women's conferences and these get-togethers that women are gravitating towards is you see everything from green burial to death doulas to people specializing in grief and loss to people who are pre-planners to cemeterians to cremationists. They are women together in the profession. They don't differentiate as far as their roles or what we do. They're just women working in the profession trying to help. And it's cool to watch that because women seem to gravitate naturally towards each other regardless of our roles. There's none of this cemetery against funeral home stuff, oh, death doulas, oh, right? Their competition or celebrants, that kind of thing. No, we are women together serving families in our communities, and we're serving the profession at the same time. So because of that, we're seeing some real good networking going on, and we're also starting to see some good mentoring happening.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Awesome.
So cool to see. You may see an application come across from a Tukio's employee or two to your leadership conference or your.
We would love to have them. Yeah, the supplier side too is really strong in the women's groups. We're seeing a lot of women coming into funeral service and then moving into the supplier side. And I've seen it vice versa. I've seen some suppliers go off and get their funeral director's license sometimes, or their certification in, cemetery planning or whatever it is, or cremation certification. And I think it's cool. I think it's great. I've seen a real well-rounded education coming out of some of these women who are very interested in our profession and what we do.
Yeah, and I mean, in our business, we found that they're better than us guys in so many ways. It's like we're trying to figure out a better recruit. But when we have them, like when women join our sales team, they're typically like the fastest ones to work their way up to the next level. They're just such great workers. They connect really well with customers, build relationships better. So we've been, you've probably seen more female Tukio's faces at the event, like the Professional Women's Conference we sent, last few years. We've had folks there, and there's another one here, Mariah, who's she's with Tukio. She's speaking at, I think, Oklahoma's Women's Conference here in a couple months. So anyway,
that's great. Yeah, they all have these great green shirts on too, so you can't miss them, right?
Well, yeah, we that's something we've tried to figure out. Like, okay, how do we let them, dress how they want to, but still kind of maintain the brand a little bit. It's been tough because I don't know. I mean, girl doesn't want, even if it's a girl's golf shirt, they don't want to wear a golf shirt, right? We need to do something better there. We've been working on that.
You do. Yeah. There's some cute girl dresses out there. There's some pantsuit outfits, and let them choose. That's what we did at Baue's. We had uniforms too. And our guys always had matching ties and the women had white blouses. And they finally came to me one day and they said, Lisa, can we get some color going on here? And I said, absolutely. Cause we'd put on a pink blouse for October for breast cancer awareness. And we had little pocket scarves or scarves, but the scarves are too hot. So I said, well, ladies, go find what you would like to wear. And so we found some really nice, colorful tank tops to wear underneath our suits. And then we found some sweaters. And what we did is we found the blouses we liked, the ladies did. And then we matched the guys' ties up to the women's blouses. And so it worked out great. So start with the women, Curtis.
Yeah, let it come across. Yeah. Well, we've given them the assignment to do that for sure. Because we don't know how to. We've already made a couple terrible choices, so we need to let them figure it out.
One odd shade of green one year. I mentioned it to a couple of your guys. I go, it doesn't look like Tukio's to me. What happened?
It's hard when you're
Curtis chose the wrong color. That's what they
I
told
don't
me.
know. Well, that's the thing. You order them online and it's like hard to know. And then the problem is like next NFDA, you know, we go with 15 people this year. Next year we go with 18 or whatever. And you've got 5 or 6 people that don't have a shirt from shirts from last year.
I
So you
know.
order new ones. So anyways, what we've done recently, like the ones we've worn the last couple of years, we just said, forget this. Like we are manufacturing Tukio's shirts. So we sourced them straight out of China a couple of years ago, and just we can order them now at any time, any size, any shape. Like basically had our own pattern and fabric made, but that's worked.
That is very smart. I think the sepia tones socks guys are doing that too, right?
Oh
CPOs.
yeah, Scipio. Yeah, Scipio. Their socks are the best. So here I'm going to read a little bit of a bio I have from you, or we found online, just to make sure like I'm going to get this out there because like I think most people know you, but Lisa Baue is a third generation funeral director with over 44 years of experience in the death care profession. She was the president and CEO of Baue Funeral Homes for 32 years, transforming it into one of the leading firms in the profession, serving over 2,500 families a year. She grew it to multiple chapel locations, including an 80-acre cemetery, a centralized care and cremation center, a cremation society, and a pet cremation business. In 2019, Lisa sold her business and founded Your Funeral Coach to help others grow themselves, others their businesses, and the next generations. And then now you've also founded Funeral Women Lead as of this year,
Right.
as you've mentioned.
Right. Yeah, and I did that, and I'll tell you why, Curtis. One person can only coach so many people, right? And the need has just I've seen it grow since the pandemic, and when I started my coaching company shortly after that, it's grown exponentially with the fact that the more and more of these young people want to become owners. They want to learn how to become leaders and managers. And there's not a lot of coaching and leadership training out there for them. NFDA does have a new National Emerging Leaders program that's pretty good. And I know Jake Johnson's got one going on in his company. A few states are starting to pick up some leadership programs, but not everyone can make it to those. So how could we make it easier, especially for women? And how can we provide a broader spectrum access to coaching and mentoring for specifically women? Because I found that most of the people that were gravitating towards my coaching services were women. I had a few guys. They didn't last long. I love the guys, but you know what? It was just a matter of what they were looking for,
Yeah.
and it's okay. I mean, we sometimes need to be with like kind, and that's perfectly fine. So more and more women, and I'm only one person, and I thought we need to start something that has a larger, broader ability to serve. So we're going to be growing Funeral Women Lead Foundation, which will be a 501c3. It's not going to be a membership association. We do not want to compete with any of the other associations that are already out there because they're all doing great jobs and great work, but they can only serve so many and under their umbrella. So we want to be able to have resources for women to know what's going on. I was talking to Nadira at ICCFA the other day, and I said, how do people find you? And she said they're finding us on Facebook, but they can't always attend ICCFA University right away. Well, there was 100 scholarships, but how many women know that there's 100 scholarships out there? All the people in our profession, where is that existing except on ICCFA website? And if you find them on Facebook. So we want to become the hub resource for women to be able to find education, development, scholarship programs like through the Funeral Service Foundation. You can go to National Emerging Leaders. You can go to NFDA conferences. You can go to Professional Women's Conference. There's a plethora of opportunities from celebrant training on down to the embalming skills training. And the Funeral Service Foundation is providing all that. I'm still serving on their board. And we have all these scholarships, but not everyone's finding us. And so how do we do that? So if we can reach out and get more in touch with women on the front lines that are working in the profession, then we'll be able to help them in their work path journey to have access to all of these different things going on so they know where to apply. where to go, where the conferences are, where the educational programs are. We intend to start with the mortuary schools. So we'll be spending more time working with all the accredited mortuary schools, Curtis, and helping them maybe even start Funeral Women Lead small hub circles, community circles within. Because if 75% of them are graduating, what happens to them afterwards? Where do they go? And what kind of support networks do they have? So if we can help connect in the school portion before they graduate, then as they graduate, they can become part of our Funeral Women Lead Circle and communities. And then they'll have access to women mentors, coaches, educational resources going on throughout all of the different associations. And our intent is to be a collaborator and support all these associations. Example, Selected Independent Funeral Homes has second career scholarships. They also have a wonderful educational trust and an online learning center. Do people know about that? And it's open to anyone. You don't have to be from Selected. So these are things that we know, those of us that are serving Funeral Women Lead right now, as well as those coming on board in the near future. We'll be growing our board of directors. We'll be growing our volunteer committees. And we're going to build a resource center that we hope will be able to help women in the profession from the time of inception in mortuary school or the time they start in a company, from a cemetery company to a cremation company, all the way through their life journey in funeral service, and hopefully keep them there. Hopefully we'll be able to help them if they're struggling. Are they struggling with an employer? There possibly might be a career center coming in the future where we can actually help vet employers who are culture friendly, who have good programs like maternity leave and paternity leave, right? PTO time, flexible work schedules. Something we're finding in the research is the schedules that funeral service has today really aren't going to fly long term with this new generation coming in. We've got to figure out a better way to schedule so that there's quality of life. My generation of baby boomers, we didn't do a very good job of that. We created our own burnout, but we just kept plugging along. We had this work ethic that said 24/7, and that's not good. And that's not good for our health. And a lot of my generation is burning out, wanting to sell their businesses, wanting to find people to buy their businesses, and they can't find them. So one of the things I've noticed, and you know this too, Curtis, and I hope our listeners do, there's a large percentage, I think Jake Johnson said it in one of your podcasts, of owners in the baby boomer generation that will, in the next 5 years, will be selling their businesses. Well, who are they going to sell them to? Right? So you have lots of choices out there. There's regional providers. There's great corporate providers as well. If I name one and miss one, I'm in trouble, so I won't do that. But we did join the Park Lawn family. I do have to share that with you, and it's been a great experience. And they've taken great care of Baue's, and they're using Tukios, I believe, for their website. Yeah, exactly. And so there's some good owners out there, but they're not all available to everyone who's owning, especially some of the smaller firms in smaller towns. Well, we're hearing from women that they want to become owners someday, but they don't know how to get there. So how do you learn to run, manage yourself, lead yourself, and how do you learn to run and manage a funeral home, cemetery, cremation, green burial, death doula company, whatever you want to start? How do you learn how to do that? It's our goal on our resource center to vet and find people who can coach and mentor in all of those different areas. You want to put up a great website? How do you learn to do that? Well, who's there to teach them? Curtis Funk, right? Who's there to teach them?
Sign me up.
Right. So they want to learn. They're like sponges, but they can't always make it out to all these national conventions and learn that way.
Yeah.
So through our Leadership Academy year 2, it's our goal, after they learn to lead themselves, that's number 1. We'll be working on emotional intelligence. We'll be working on self-confidence. We'll be working on how do you make yourself and create a leader within you. Because it is doable. It is learnable. You may not think you're a leader now, but you can become one. It takes time, but it also takes work and education and learning. Year 2 will go down 2 paths, 2 tracks. One will be learning to manage others, and the other will be more for those who want to become owners or owners who'd like to sharpen their skills. How do you learn to own a business? How to make a business profitable? How do you manage people, right? All those things. How do you talk to bankers and attorneys? I mean, I coach some women right now that are brand new owners, and they're having to go sit down and have conversations with bankers and attorneys, and they're like, well, what do I talk to them about? Right? I
Mhm.
have one young woman who I've coached over the last couple of years, and right before she was ready to close on the business and buy it, the owner died by suicide,
Oh man.
leaving her with no one to coach and mentor her or guide her. And she's someone that actually used to work for me, and she found me on a webinar and said, "Would you help me?" And I really helped her gear up that first year and helped her get started just to learn how to be like an owner. These are things that these young people don't know how to do yet. And if we don't develop them, and not all the firms have the ability to do that. I've done some coaching and mentoring for various associations, and I'm finding that the owners themselves don't really know how to coach and mentor these young people, especially women coming into the profession. And they're reaching out and they're saying, "Hey, would you help me with her? She wants to be an owner and I don't know how to teach her." Learning to teach what you do is hard. It's not
Especially
easy.
when you learned it like along the way on your own, like most of them have, right? And
No,
they were
I
never
did.
taught it. So like when you were
Exactly.
never taught it, you don't know how to really kind
That's
of
right.
teach
That's
it.
right. When my dad died in 1987, I was 30 years old and I had very little training. The one training I had taken was from the National Foundation of Funeral Service, which is now the Funeral Service Foundation. And we had a 3-week management course, and they taught us how to merchandise, how to read
Hmm.
a profit and loss statement. I had at least that under my belt when Dad died. And I'd been licensed for 8 years, but I'd never seen a profit and loss statement for Bowie's. And 3 months before he died, Dad bought the cemetery, bought his partner out in the cemetery, and we're now cemeterians. And I'm like, what does that mean? Right. So, you start going to ICCFA meetings, and then we started our own crematory and our cremation society. So you start going to CANA and Cremation Association in North America, and that's where you learn. But when you're in your early years, those aren't things that people are preparing you for because
Yeah.
your dad doesn't think he's going to die at age 53.
Yeah.
You're 30 years old. So as I thought about this and I was creating my coaching company, Curtis, I realized I don't want anyone to learn the way I did. That's not the way to do it. On the job is great, but there needs to be more education out there. And
Hmm.
so how can I help as one little person to, coach and guide and mentor? And then how can I help them find resources to better improve their skills? So I found myself during my coaching years, and I'm still coaching some select individuals. How can I find them the resources if I don't have them? Because I'm just one person. And I know one thing is we don't know it all. We never know it all. And we have to use all of those experts out in the field and go learn from them. And that's a good mentoring, good coaching. And that's the place where you find those good coaches and mentors is to go ask,
Hmm.
hey, I want to learn more about websites. So Curtis Funk, will you be my mentor? Right. So that's how it works. But they don't know how to find Curtis Funk. So how are they going to find you? Well, that's where
Yeah.
I think Funeral Women Lead will come in.
Yeah.
If you
I'm
want to hear more
excited
about,
about this.
thank you. Well, we're excited to get started. We're still, we're like a baby in diapers. We're crawling. We
Hmm.
have coming up in the future a couple of new hires, some new board members, and we're going to be starting some committees this
And
fall.
where can people find out, like learn more? What's the website?
Well, you go to funeralwomenlead.org.
Okay.
Funeralwomenlead.org. That's where we hang out online. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook. So you can find us on most of the socials. And through the experiences, that I had, I'm also launching a book in September. So if you want to hear all the horror stories about being an owner and all the mistakes that you make along the way, it's going to be in my book called Wake Up Calls. And Wake Up Calls is really a hybrid memoir, Curtis, and it's about my journey in leadership and how I made lots of mistakes during my 38, 40 years as a funeral professional. But it's how we learn, right? We learn through our own mistakes. I also have in this book some key learning for all people, both genders, men and women. If you want to become an owner, here's some things to think about. Here's some things to challenge yourself with. Here's some ways to get more involved. I list all the associations out there, all the foundations out there that are available to help people in funeral service. So Wake Up Calls is going to go live on Amazon, and you'll be able to find it on September 3rd. So we'll get you
Awesome.
more information on that as it comes out. But we're going to donate all the proceeds of my book, Wake Up Calls, to all the organizations and foundations that support good learning for women in the profession. And
Awesome.
we've let most of them know about that. So
Well, you sound like you've been just as busy these last 6 years as you were when you were running the funeral home.
You know, when you're a busy person, you're used to being busy. Sitting back and doing nothing is no fun. So, and you want to get back to, Curtis. You find that as you
Totally.
get to that place in your life journey. When I was in my early 60s and made a decision to retire, I knew I wasn't going to fully retire. I knew I wanted to give back to the profession. And that was a way to start doing that through first coaching. And some of it was free mentoring, complimentary mentoring to those that needed it. And then starting the funeral, this new foundation. That's been a lot of fun. And that hopefully will continue well long past me as I build the board and I build a great organization. I'm not doing this myself. I'm doing it with a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. And we have a new podcast. So you'll have to listen in. We just started it in June. And our podcast is called 4 Women and a Funeral. And it's really a lot of fun. It's 4 women. We have Elisa Carr from Kelco. We have Melissa Posey-Luce from Security National Life. And we have the new secretary for NFDA that in 4 years will be the very first woman president of NFDA, Ellen McBrayer. And so we're having a lot of fun on this podcast. We'll be posting our new episodes at least monthly. And if we can find time in Ellen's schedule to get together more often, as she gets busier, we'll try to have this podcast out more frequently. But for right now, it's a monthly podcast. And you can find it on Spotify, other places, wherever you find your podcast. And it should be up on our website as well.
Yeah, I just subscribed on Apple Podcasts, so I'll be following you as well. So we got to hear from the beginning here, because the purpose of PodCasket is we want to know the stories of all the legends in funeral service and tell those stories. Yeah. And so obviously you've just continued to build so many cool things. And I mean, like you say, you want to give back. You've given so much back already. And just to see this Funeral Women Lead in its inception is awesome to be able to watch this happening. But where did this all start? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was it like with your family?
Okay, so a lot of that's in my book, if you want the long version. But I grew up in St. Charles, Missouri. It was a little river town back in the day, and I was born in 1956 and actually born in Southern Illinois. My mom went home to have me because her uncle and father had a hospital there, and she wanted her baby born there. So then about 2, maybe a month, 6 weeks, whenever she could get out, she drove down in the old Cadillac from my grandparents to mortuary school in Dallas. So my first year in life was at the Dallas Institute of Mortuary Science, where my dad was going to school. Then we moved above the funeral home when I was a little girl, and eventually we got our own house in St. Charles. So I grew up in St. Charles, Missouri, went to school right across the street from the funeral home that my grandfather owned and my dad worked in. And then eventually my dad purchased it from my grandfather. So I spent the night above a funeral home for many, many years, and used to play in the casket room and other places. You know what kids do. We sneak around. They tell us not to go there, but we do it anyway. And I was just fascinated by the profession. There was a time I came over from school, and there was a little girl that had died. And I asked Dad about it, and he says, well, I don't want you to go in there. He goes, I don't want this to upset you. Well, knowing Lisa, he probably knew better. Lisa doesn't always do what she's told. So I did go in there, and I wanted to see what it looked like to see a little girl who had died. And I thought, it was going to be really upsetting, but I was very curious and very interested. She was so beautiful, and she was so pretty. She has flowers all around her. It was so sad, but she was... What my grandfather, my dad did to make her look like she was just sleeping, to me was pretty impactful. And my dad found me outside on the front of the funeral home steps that day, and I was a little upset, I think, and probably crying. And he put his arm around me. He said, you went in there, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, I did, Dad." And he goes, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." I said, "She looks so beautiful and so peaceful." And so we just talked from there. And then later on, as I was growing up, I was very curious about embalming and what we did there and how we helped families help that little girl look beautiful. And so I went off to college, and Dad just said, go to college and grow up. So I did that. And I majored in Spanish and minored in Portuguese.
Oh,
And it
no
was,
way. Where'd you go?
yeah, University of Missouri, Columbia. I was a tiger, and just had fun. He says, "Okay, I'm growing up, Dad. Now what do I do?" Well, finding a job with a language major, I thought maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll be a travel agent. So I got into the field, did not care for it at all. My dad at the time did not encourage me to go to mortuary school. My brother went. My brother got a business degree. I went someplace else, and I was the oldest. And I often ask him over the years, "Hey, Dad, why didn't you encourage me to go that path?" And he said, "Well, women weren't really doing that back then." So I
Hmm.
was in my mid 20s, not satisfied with my career, very unhappy actually. I was kind of at a desk job. This was before computers, Curtis. We were hand stamping brochures on the phone forever, talking to travel agents, booking people
Wow.
around the world, right? It was an insane. So I knew I didn't like desk jobs, and I was a people person. And maybe Dad saw that in me, and he said, "Hey, what do you think about coming into the family business? And I'll send you off to management school." And that's what he did. So I tried that. He said, "Come in and give it a try." So I tried it, and I loved it. I mean, I was cleaning parlors, washing hearses, going out on transfers with the guys, just doing everything I could. I had to learn to type a death certificate by hand with like no whiteout. You can't use them. So typing, right? Not my passion,
Jeez.
but yeah. So if you made a mistake, one mistake when you were typing, you had to throw it out and start all over again. So many late
Oh,
nights
wow.
typing death certificates, hand printing prayer cards, all those things that we had to do back in the day. But the one thing I loved the most about it was caring for the families. I spent a lot of time taking care of infants and children, families who had tragic losses. For some reason, all the guys I worked with, and I was the only licensed woman there at the time, that they didn't want to do that. So I did. I kept doing it until I think when I was pregnant with my son John, I felt like it would make families uncomfortable if they saw a big pregnant funeral director and they had just lost their infant child. So I kind of pushed that onto the guys for a while and said, "Hey, for my mental health and for the family that we're caring for, I think it's best if I'm not present for them because that might make them feel uncomfortable." And I didn't want that. So I pulled away for a bit in that area, but I just still loved serving families. And that's really where I spent my first 8 years as a funeral director, getting involved in the community, joining a few clubs here and service clubs here and there, JCs, and then eventually Rotary and things like that. And it was just really fun. It was my passion. And then Daddy died in 1987 when I was 30 years old. And that was pretty tough on our family. And you'll read more about that in my book. It's sometimes very emotional to talk about because you're one day he's here and one day he's not. And he died down at a funeral directors convention in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, my gosh.
And so he was attending there. And when you have a sudden death in your life and you're not expecting it, what do you do? So you sit around a table and you drink a lot of coffee and you try to figure out how to get your dad back from Nashville, Tennessee. And you don't
Hmm.
know any funeral homes down there. So you're talking to the people that are at the convention and you're saying, "Okay, where's our member of this group down there?" Well, there isn't one. What? You guys are
Wow.
having a convention, you don't even have a member down there. So we had to get Dad back, and the rest is kind of a blur. It was kind of those days where you had 2 days of visitation and everything was just overwhelming. And right in the middle of the visitation, the phone rang in at the office, and my staff came in and said, "Lisa, there's someone that has to speak to you right away, and she won't take no for an answer." So I said, "Okay," and off I go, and I go back in our flower room, and I'm talking to this person, and it turns out it was one of my mentors. And she said, after sympathies and crying, and those things. She said, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, go to the funeral tomorrow, And she goes, no, I mean, what are you going to do with the business? And I said, well, I don't know. I have no idea how to be an owner. She goes, well, I do. I am an owner and I will help you.
Hmm.
And she was one of the women that I met at the first professional women's conference that my dad helped start back when it was the National Foundation of Funeral Service. And he had
Oh,
started
wow.
in the early 80s a women's education program for women to get together. And I had gone for 3 years and I had met some incredible women. And all three of those women became my mentors.
Hmm.
And they helped me, they called me, they reached out to me when dad died, and they pretty much carried me through the first couple of years because I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I had a great staff at Bowie's. I had some good advisors, good lawyers and attorney, accountants and all those things. But when you're working on yourself, when you're grieving and you're mourning at the same time you're trying to figure out how to run a business, much less a cemetery that just fell into your lap, and the business has more debt than you thought it did, and it has some challenges, you need that support and help. It's not easy, and you're mourning at the same time. Let's not forget that. Dr. Wolfelt, Alan Wolfelt, who's become a very close friend of mine over many, many years, was connected with us back then. And he called and he said, Lisa, we need to talk about your grief and loss and what you're going to do. Right. And Curtis, you've had losses in your life. I think fairly recently, you just had a family member
Yeah,
die.
my mom
Yeah.
passed away a couple months ago.
I know. I'm so sorry. And
Oh, thank
it's
you.
it's never easy to lose a parent, much less lose somebody who was your role model, who was the owner of the business, and who really knew how to do things, but you don't know how to do any of this. So you're kind of struggling. You feel like you're in this black hole for a while. And eventually you have people lift you up and they help carry you and they help support and coach and mentor you, and eventually you figure it out. I had a great owner study group that I belonged to. I could drop a whole bunch of names. You would know all of them. They were all guys and they were all like my big brothers. And we were in this study group together called the Funeral Service Symposium, FUS. And we met together as owners, and I learned so much from them. And they would help give you advice on what to do with your business. And that helped a lot too. So I think over time, one of my big life lessons has been find yourself a good coach, a good mentor. If there's something you don't know how to do, don't try to fake it till you make it, as they say. Reach out and ask for the help of others because there's a lot of other people out there much smarter than we are. And that's who we need to learn from. And they'll help you along the way. And you can do it. Don't give up. It's not easy, this profession. It does take a lot out of you. But at the end of the day, when you know that you're making a difference in people's lives at one of the most difficult times of their lives, that continues to sustain you. That's what it's all about. And if you
Hmm.
don't have the ability to do that, and you don't feel the strong need to do that, then find something else that fulfills you. Something else that fulfills you inside, right? That's not just a job. That's called a mission. That's called a career. So that's
Yeah, that's
Lisa's story.
awesome.
Yeah. And along the way, I had a couple kids and a few dogs here and there, a couple horses. And then I met this great guy from Colorado, and I was out riding horses with a girlfriend, and uh, we just kind of clicked. And the next thing you know, we're getting married. The next thing you know, we're got a house in Colorado too. So life is good. Life is good.
Yeah,
This
you
is
still have your horses today?
nice shed behind me, huh? I still do have my horses, yes. I don't get to ride them all as often as I'd like to because now I'm traveling quite a bit. I head next week to the Southern Cemetery Cremation and Funeral Association meeting, and then I'll be going to the Cremation Association of North America in August. Selected in September, Independent Funeral Homes, that'll be down in NOLA. And then, of course, we'll see everybody at NFDA. We'll have a booth there. And I'll have my book there, too. And I'll be doing some book signings. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, and I'm still on the Funeral Service Foundation. This is my last year. I'm going to miss it a lot. I just love the foundation. They do great work. Been there, been very honored to serve for the last 6 years, and was able to help as their board chair one year. And I've made such good friends there that I've learned so much from them. They're just amazing people. People like Mark Krause and John Heald and Alan Cole from up in Canada and Toronto. And, we've got a great board. They're going to continue to do great things and provide scholarship programs for all of us in funeral service that need more education. So I'll be there, and it'll be my last year on the board, but I'll still be a big supporter of NFDA and all that they do because it's a great group.
Yeah, not funeral service foundation board right now. It is just a rock star team. It's so cool. I've been invited just to a couple of, dinners and things. I mean, I've seen you there with others, and it's just awesome group to be a part of. So what's something about you that would like just surprise everyone, like something that's like unexpected? Because I feel like you've been on stage, I feel like, in the profession for a long time. I mean, I think, when I entered the space, I knew your name within not so much time, probably within a matter of months, right?
Nice.
And I feel like that's just been the case for the last 25 years or more. I mean, that's how long I've been around here anyway. But so what's something that like we just wouldn't know?
I don't know. Well, I'm not much of a good girly girl. My mom tried to turn me into a girly girl and wearing skirts and dresses, and I really failed. I'm more comfortable in blue jeans and cowboy boots and on top of my horse and getting my hands dirty. I love to garden and I love the great outdoors, but I'm really kind of a tomboy. I try really well. You can see I got my cowboy boots in the back and a little Western attire going on here. I do my best to act like a professional woman, but deep down inside, Lisa's just an old cowgirl at hand. I was raised by my grandfather in the summers growing up, and we had a farm down in southern Illinois. This is Grandpa Baue, and he taught me how to shoot squirrels, rabbits. I know to hunt. I know how to hunt. In fact, with my owner study group, my nickname is Bad Boots Baue. We'd go pheasant hunting here and there over the years, and I kind of had some blisters on my brand new hunting boots one year, and so I got those boys called me Bad Boots. That was my nickname. But I love to hunt. I love to shoot guns. I've loved to fish, those kind of things, and I just kind of was raised in a group of men by a whole bunch of men, and I had all brothers. So, you got to do what you got to do. But I just love that part of life. And to me, it's just very fun and very interesting. Most people don't know that I was a Spanish major with a minor in Portuguese.
And have you used that?
Yo puedo hablar la lengua de la gente de México, pero mis palabras son muy malas a veces. So in other words, I can speak with an accent, but I don't always have the vocabulario that I really need to have because I'm a little rusty. But I did live in Mexico and went to school down there during
really?
High school and college, and got to live with some terrific families and total immersion kind of thing. So I did learn the language, and I learned the people. And I will tell you, the Hispanic people that I met, those from Mexico especially, I just fell in love with the way they care for family and how loyal and dedicated they are. And I believe Spanish, well, is obviously the second most spoken language in our country. And the Hispanic people that live here are just wonderful. And many of them have become my friends over the years. So
where were you in Mexico?
I was in Colima, Mexico, which is a state of Colima. Let's see, it's about 200 miles maybe north of Acapulco, and it's kind of in the middle on the west coast below Puerto Vallarta and between Acapulco.
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah, and it was a mountain town. They do have a beach resort, some beach resorts down there, but I was back in the mountains with this family and the Martinezes, and got to know them over the years and kept going back to visit, and some of them would come up and visit us. And then
how did that happen? Like, how did you get lined up to go to stay with the Martinez?
I think my mother always wanted to travel the world and learn languages. And so when I was young, she found we had a Spanish tutor that actually rented an apartment above the funeral home. And they got, for reduced rent, she taught me Spanish after school when I was in 7th and 8th grade. So I just kept going with my Spanish through high school. And I was really pretty proficient by the time I hit college. So I just kept going, not really knowing what I wanted to do in life. And then I to school down there to the Ibo American University in Mexico City, and took some linguistics classes and improved my skills in the language. And then I got out of college and had no clue what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
So I got some extra training as a travel agent. You went to a school back then and got a certification, and then you sat on the phone for hours and hours.
Were you ever in Mexico during like Dia de los Muertos?
Oh, in St. Charles, Missouri, we did not, when I was running the business and growing up, we did not have a lot of Hispanic families. So we never did have a Dia de los Muertos, but I
But
think
while
this.
were you ever in Mexico during that time, like during like
Oh,
from
during the
October to
time,
November?
no,
Yeah.
I wasn't. I was there mostly in the summers.
Okay.
But I've been to their cemeteries. Every time we go to Mexico, I haul my husband to the cemetery, and we go tour the Mexican cemeteries. We had a taxi driver a couple years ago, and we're passing it when we're in this little community. And I said, "Stop!" And my husband was like, "Oh no, here we go again." But this guy
Uh,
took us in. We parked the car, and he showed us where all his ancestors were buried, and it was
no
so.
way. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
it was so cool. And I got to see, and we were just, I think we were there in November. So they had just come off Dia de los Muertos and
Hmm.
Los Santos. And so they had all of the decorations, and you could see some of the food that was still there, and how they
Hmm.
decorate their loved ones' graves. It was really cool. So
That's
yeah,
so cool. Their
yeah.
culture's so great. It's celebration, and I love
It is.
that movie Coco. You know, like the
Yeah, yeah, I
my,
did too.
I've got little kids, but like yeah, I just love that idea of like the ofrenda, you know, and like keeping your family's photos. And anyway,
Exactly.
that's so
Yeah.
cool.
It is
Wow.
cool. It is cool. Any chance you get. I mean, we were, where were we traveling? Oh, we were up in the Great Lakes just recently for vacation. And we went to these little communities, and, you would see things. I was like, there's a cemetery.
Yeah.
It's in your blood, Curtis. It stays in your blood. It doesn't go away.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love to tour them as well. Honestly, like, you know, I mean, I think it's just every, you know, funeral home is interesting too, just the different way they do things, but cemeteries are so awesome. So just a couple questions I've got just when you shared your history. So when your father passed, was it, he just bought the cemetery, had the funeral home. Was there just the one location at that time?
There
The,
was. He had a partner that he had just, he had been in partnership. I guess my grandfather was in silent partnership with someone in a neighboring town, and so right before Daddy died, he had added a second location. It was still being managed by that former owner, and he came into, he was one of my early coaches and mentors as well. Then we added a third location, and eventually a fourth. So we just kind of grew with the county. We were really, really blessed in St. Charles County that we went from a population of less than probably 80,000 to well over, I think they're close to 350, 380,000 people now. So,
wow.
yeah.
So your growth was all there to support the community. And so was this done through like these other two locations? Were they new builds?
No, they actually weren't. They were converted. They were converted buildings. The third location was a new build right on the front of our cemetery. We called it originally the Funeral Memorial Center, and people just kept calling it Bowie Cave Springs. So we're like, well, maybe we should change the name. They don't know what a funeral memorial center is, but we put in a crematory. We had a flower and gift shop there. We had our cemetery offices, and it was kind of the whole one-stop shop concept. And eventually we realized we outgrew the capacity, that particular facility grew like crazy. We were right off a major interstate, and of course we had our beautiful memorial gardens in the background, and that just the convenience of that made it so easy. But we eventually bought it was a car emissions testing building, and we converted it into a centralized care center. So, and it's still there now. We have our crematories, we have a large cooler space, large storage facility, and our entire care center, embalming prep room, a great place. We have lounge for the staff, and we have locker rooms, and it was a great building to convert, and it's right next to our cemetery. So it's really convenient for us to be able to help families there. And you can come in if a family is having a cremation and they just want to do a viewing ID. You can do it right there in that site, because we converted part of that building into more of a living room parlor setting, as well as a place where you can go and view the cremation if you'd like to participate in that. And then we have a dressing room for families if they wish to dress the deceased. Some religious sects still like to do that, of course. And if there's a mother with an infant and she wants to be present and help casket the baby, we make that all available to them there. So, and interestingly enough, when we were building the cooler space, I was working with our GM who's still there. And he's like, we need to make this thing larger. And I said, larger? And he goes, oh yeah, larger. And we put a generator on it. And we had the most cooler space than anyone in our region during the pandemic. We even had more cooler space than the medical examiner in St. Louis. So it
Wow.
really helped us a lot during the pandemic, be able to manage to the multiples deaths we had in such a short time. So
Yeah.
it's a good move. It was a good move to have that.
Do you still go back? I mean, it sounds like, I mean, still somewhat involved. Do you still go back?
I try to get back as often as I can, and when I'm there, I try to support them. I go back usually for memorial services, especially around the holidays, and just try to be there, be present for the staff. I'll pick up the phone and call the family if I know them really well. Obviously, there's a lot of my generation. Unfortunately, we're losing some of my generation, and I try my best to be there, but I can't always be back there every single day. I think one of the keys in business when you decide to move on is to make sure that you leave a strong team, and that team, even while you're there, is a team that most of the time you're not needed. I mean, I think
Hmm.
that's a good sign of a leader. It's a good sign of good ownership is when you empower, but you also train and develop the team that you support to be better than you. And most of them, they almost all of them, well, I would just say all of them are there, and many of them are still there, which is great to see. We have a lot more
Hmm.
women too. Oh my goodness! I look over the staff numbers, and we have women still managing several parts of our business, as well as the women on the front line funeral directors. And it's not intentionally on purpose. It's just because the numbers are there. The women are coming out and getting licensed in our profession. And in Missouri, we're pretty fortunate. We are able to have separate licensing. So you can be a funeral director only, or you can be a funeral director and embalmer. And
Okay.
I would love to see the states adopt those licensing practices. I believe some are starting to get there. They're not all there yet. But we know with the increase of cremation, embalming is becoming less and less. And whether it is or isn't, it doesn't, there are two different skill sets and two different parts of our brain. And I see the women who are caregivers and funeral directors and compassion. Not that our embalmer women are not. In fact, we head of our care center is a woman. The majority of our embalmers are all women, but
Wow.
they love the embalming and the care of the deceased. They're not necessarily really, and most of them tell us they don't want to be arranging funeral directors. They want to be embalming funeral directors. And so I think having those choices available and making sure that as young people come into our profession, they have choices of where they want to spend time, either the care of the deceased or the care of the living. I think it
Hmm.
needs to be separated. That's my personal opinion. Not everyone agrees with me, but that's okay.
No, that's really interesting. Um, Another question, like, so obviously the transition there in the late '80s was hard, with your father passing, but over those next 30 years, were there any like major events, disasters, anything that you had to
Oh yeah, there's a
deal
lot.
with?
There were a lot. We all had to deal with it. I think anyone who owns a business is going to have a disaster here or there. You'll hear most of the details in my book. Actually, some of them I choose not to talk about because it involves people who are still living and people who
Hmm.
don't want to see hurt. Right. So, but there's staffing challenges. There's people who don't always do the right thing in your company. When your company starts growing to become sizable, which we were very blessed towards the end to have some really good growth in the last 10 years. I think you have to vet people more carefully, and you always want to learn, you always want to manage better closer to the front lines, because as an owner, you can get caught up in volunteering in funeral service, being on boards. in your community as well. And you're not always there day to day. You can't be. You physically cannot be present all the time. But I found the biggest challenge we had was leadership. And we had some people that were in management that just weren't good leaders. And what happened was I found they weren't caring for our staff well, and they were just treating them horribly. And we had a toxic culture. And the way I found out about it the first time was we had a union filing. And we have unions in St. Louis. We have an embalmers union. And what I discovered after that is that our people were being hurt emotionally in how they were not being well cared for. And Curtis, that was the biggest learning experience of my career. Is it was not okay that you treat your families like gold and you treat your employees not well. And I could use another word there. And when you're in union negotiations, so that you don't become unionized, because there's some real restrictions if you become unionized, which is really sad. Like, for example, if a family wanted to change in cosmetics, you have to call in your union preparation embalmer, even if they're off, and pay them double or triple time, whatever the contract says. You cannot touch them. Even if you can do cosmetics yourself, which I could, I, as the owner, couldn't make that change immediately for a family. And I was not okay with that. But I was really not okay with the way our staff was being treated. And so going through a year of union negotiations was not fun. And I learned a ton, more than I wanted to know. But the one thing that came out of that is we're going to change a culture here at Baue's. And we're going to start, and leadership starts at the top. If I'm not the best leader that they need me to be, I'm going to change. And I went into an organization called the Leaders Network, and I started studying leadership under a guy named Larry Beeson, who came out of Batesville. He was a VP of Western Region, had a degree in HR, and he brought a group of us as owners and managers together through my good friend John Horan in Denver, Colorado, and started this organization called the Leaders Network. So learning to be a better, more supportive, compassionate leader for our people, flipping that organizational chart upside down where you're down here and you're supporting them. You're caring for them, you're developing them, you're giving them, getting them more continuing education, developing them as leaders. So we started reading books together back in the day before you could read them online. Anything from John Maxwell to Daniel Pink to, there's dozens of others behind me. I've got books on my shelves from dozens of different leadership writers. So we started reading together and we learned more and more about being better leaders, being better team members. Like the Ideal Team Player is just a great little book. Patrick Lencioni has got some great books, The Advantage and 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. We started reading all those together because we were learning that we weren't doing things very well and treating our people well. And then there's also people who kind of don't follow the rules or the laws. And they don't think they need to, or they think they can get away with it. And so there's a few of those that happened over your career. I was actually in place for 38 years before we sold the business. And when my son and I made that decision, it was really, really hard. He did not want to stay and own it. And my daughter was in Vegas and she's an event planner. And when you don't have a succession plan and your business has grown to the size that it did, you had to make some tough decisions. And I wanted to be able to see the business sustain. And it had grown to the size where it wasn't affordable for employees to buy it. And it just broke my heart because that would have been my goal. But I wanted to be sure that our people had good jobs and that we had a good company to take good care of them. And people like Jay Dodds and Brad were just
Brad Green, yeah.
Yeah, Brad Green, yeah. And so Jennifer Hay now, how about that? New woman,
Yeah.
Park Lawn, that's pretty cool. And so I felt, they could take the business and sustain it and grow it. And that's what it's doing. It's doing very, very well by the way. But those were some of the heartbreaking times during the business where people didn't do the right things and you found out about it later and they kind of hid things from you. And I learned that even when my door was open, it felt closed to people. They didn't feel they could approach me. And that was really hard. I was like, what, really? I said, what can I do? And I found out that I was over here being such a tough businesswoman for so long. I wasn't showing them my true heart. And once I opened my heart up to them, and they saw that I was actually human. I was just Lisa, and I really cared for them. Things changed. The whole culture at Bowie changed, but it started with me first. It had to start first because I was the reason things weren't going well. And I think leadership starts at the top anyway, Curtis, but you can teach leadership and grow leaders at all levels. So we spent time, everyone from the housekeepers to the grounds and maintenance folks to any part-time person, they all had leadership training when they came to Bowie's. We started Bowie University, and we brought in trainers like Marguerite Ham to come in on site and help develop our people into better leaders. And we did book readings together. And boy, I will tell you, the last 15 years of our company's life and culture was just flowered and just grew exponentially. And I truly believe it was because we empowered, developed, cared for, and developed our people as leaders.
It's
Because we
so
weren't,
cool.
yeah. So
I've got a lot of respect for you. Like, I mean, to be at the level you were with the company and the growth and everything, but to like be open-minded like that and humble enough to say like, what can we do to
yeah,
continue growth and change? And I mean, so another question here, because through all this, you're very innovative. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, as you describe some of the, like centralized care and like all the offerings you had, you were a very innovative
try.
owner and operator. Where did you get the courage to do that? Because I feel like that's one, like you talked about, like there's not a lot of innovation in funeral service, and it's not for a lack of like it being there. It's just probably a lack of implementation. So what do you think? Like what did you do differently as an owner and operator? Where did you get that courage to actually to make those changes and innovate, add new things?
That's interesting you use the word courage, Curtis. I don't know if that's really where it came from or it came from a true desire to better serve our families. Again, going to my owner's study group, being part of organizations like Selected, NFDA, ICCFA, and CANA, just being with them at PFDI, Preferred Funeral Directors International, which is a marketing organization. I will tell you, you hear new innovative ideas. And as you hear them, you can't ignore them. And if you find out how they're working well in other firms, you're like, "Oh, I want to try that." In fact, my staff would try it. I think I drove my staff a little crazy because I come home from every meeting. I bet you do this too. With these ideas of, oh man, we got to try this. We got to try this. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm a very creative person naturally. And so I was never really afraid to try things. I'm more of a cautious risk taker though, because failure sometimes will hold you back from trying new things. And so maybe in some respects, I think I was a little hesitant to be the first to jump into some new things. I'd watch how others did it. I watch them make their mistakes and then I'd learn from that. And then I was okay with being second in the market. I was okay with being the second person in my study group to try something. I think sometimes being the first and what do we call those things in death care? We call them disruptors, right? Not just
Mm-hmm.
innovators. Those come with a lot of risk. And so when you are an owner that does have debt and you're still paying debt off, you build a building, you have a lot of debt, right? You buy out your dad's estate, you have a lot of debt. You pay that debt off over time. That has a way of driving you also to look for new areas to be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't look for new areas to be profitable, your business will just continue doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you'll get the same results and you'll stagnate. So, the consumer also, I believe in studying our market and listening to our families. So, we did a lot of surveying, a lot of research, a lot of market research on our market. I listened and watched what was happening just in other markets and saying, that trend's probably going to hit us and we need to be prepared for it. And so I think there you have to use a lot of listening as well. I don't know if I'd call it courage. I'd call it listening, and I'd call it just being ideas. I get think tanks together with my staff. It wasn't just me. I mean, I come up with some crazy ideas and I say, okay, shoot holes in it. And we'd
Mm-hmm.
have idea think tanks on a quarterly basis where we would meet, and part of our meetings weren't just on financial tracking and updates and all that operational stuff, which is important. Not got to have all those legal compliance things done. But let's talk about how we can better serve our families, and let's talk about how we can better care for our staff. Those were our top two things that we worked on every single time. And then the third was, what else? What do we need to stop doing, start doing, do differently? We always ask those questions. And I go out in the field on funerals with our team, and I'd ask every one of those on our management team to do the same thing. Talk to the front lines. They'll tell you what's going on. Ask them what we need to stop doing, and ask them what we need to start doing. And I have to give my good friend John Horan credit for that. He taught me that. And that's
Mhm.
listening carefully to your people and to your client families.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's great advice. Very, very, yeah, excellent advice. I had another question for you. Oh, so thinking about future of funeral service, you made a comment at the beginning of our conversation. I'm trying to remember how you phrased it about like, I don't know, did you say saving funeral service or?
yeah, well,
You,
we believe that women are the answer to the future of the profession, because there are so many of them coming into the profession. If we do our very best to develop them, grow them into leaders, teach them how to lead themselves, become managers and owners, that they will help this profession become better. Women are compassionate, they're empathetic, and they're creative. And if you look at the kind of funerals that most of the women, at least at Baue's, that I've come to know over the years, some of these women that are celebrants and teaching celebrancy, their creative abilities are amazing. And what they bring to the table and how they help develop events, funerals, memorial services, gatherings, whatever you want to call them, whatever they're called now or in the future, I believe that women are the answer and the key to helping families get back to having a service and a ceremony, a life event that helps those who mourn inside the company, right? We're losing funerals left and right. I still see the death calls at Bowie's, and it drives me crazy when I see someone who's already decided to take the urn home, and they're not placing the urn in a place of remembrance in our cemetery. Or if they're saying no funeral, no direct cremation, no service. How do they know that at the time of death? Well, that's what mom or dad wanted. I believe that women have the ability to help families realize and understand how a celebration of life, how a memorial service, how a memorial gathering will help them mourn and help them heal, because they know how to lead from the heart and communicate from the heart. And thus, because of that, I think they will help save the profession from becoming just a direct disposal commodity.
yeah,
And I'm banking on that. And that's why I want to put something together and decided to start something that help women get there. Not that the men can't. There are some great funeral directors that are men and very creative. I'm not saying they can't. But as a group, these women are the majority, so why are we not developing them further and bringing them together? I hope to see the day where we have 50% men and women working side by side together to better create a profession that will sustain itself in the future.
and
So I think
how do you get the
that's
message out? Sorry,
excuse
I was gonna say, how do you get the message out to the market before they get in the funeral home? You know, like so, like they don't come in with this preconceived, I don't need a funeral thought.
me. Well, you got a lot of women in pre-planning, which is good. I think we have to have the courage to step it up and talk to people about how these experiences will help them mourn and help them grieve the loss of their loved one and help them heal. I think we have to use that word heal a lot more. Dr. Wolfelt teaches this, and he talks to consumers all the time when he comes to visit and he comes to do programs in your community. And he has many, many writings on the value of funerals and the value of ceremony and why they are healing experiences. And I think to get that message out, you have to start marketing that. I think you have to tell people directly, and you have to start doing educational programs, Curtis, not just pre-planning programs, but why
Right.
funerals matter. If you look at that's a phrase he uses all the time. I think that's one of his trainings is why funerals matter. Why are they important? If you don't like the word funeral and you want to call it something else, that's okay. Why celebrations of life matter. Why remembering someone and honoring someone's life in a special way is important to your healing as a mourner in the future. I mean, it's so easy to run away from pain. right? We have a tendency of being pain avoiders. Dr. Wolfelt teaches that all the time. And so we're running away from the pain, and we're not teaching people how to embrace it and how it will help them heal. You've got to
Yeah.
have good goodbyes. You have to
Yeah.
recognize that that person has died, and you also have to mourn their loss. And that's just part of living. We weren't afraid of doing that back in the early years when people died at much higher rate, sometimes on the plains as they were crossing, in their horse and all that stuff. I mean, people died rapidly. Now life is prolonged. So we're prolonging life. But then when someone dies, we're not recognizing that that's a very important life event. That's an
Yeah.
event. And if we can't have that event now, have it later. If it has to be delayed, which is hard. I had my brother died last year, and he died alone in California. And he was gone for some time before we found him, because he was kind of a guy that would go out on his bike, and he'd go mountain biking in the mountains of California for a while. And we wouldn't hear from him for weeks. But we noticed we didn't hear from him on my other brother's birthday. And we did a check on him, and he had been gone for a few weeks, we think. And we
Wow.
couldn't get him back for 3 months. Even as good of funeral directors as we are, because of identification in a big city like San Francisco, we could not get him back physically, his cremated
Jeez.
remains, until the end of August. But what did we do? We still had a celebration of life. We still had his funeral service. It was a memorial service. We had an urn present, even though he wasn't in it, because we needed that. The mourners need that. We needed our opportunity to say goodbye to Mark and be able to remember him in special ways. That helped us heal. It helped us move on in our grief journey. So we've got to find ways to tell and educate people about that, why that's important. I think telling stories is important. And I think the more stories you can tell and the more valid psychological research you can use, that from people like Dr. Wolfelt and others that say mourning is healthy and this is a way to mourn in healthy ways. Become the expert in your community and help people understand why that's important. Teach that in your pre-planning programs you're having. Get to people early on. I would sit there many, many times over the years in our pre-planning programs, and I would tell the story of my dad's death. And I would tell the story of others who experienced family members who said, I don't want a funeral. And that family member who was making the arrangements that day needed something. And I had to work with them in a special way to help them get through their guilt of having something for themselves. So I like to tell people, don't be selfish in life or death. If you love your family, allow them to have the kind of service and ceremony, event, or gathering they need to have, because they're the ones left here on this earth without you. And you can't
Mhm.
stop them from mourning by telling them not to have a funeral. You're actually going to hurt them even more. Do you really want to do that? I would hope not. Give them options and choices so that at the time of your death, they can make decisions based on what they need. That's the best gift you can give to your family. And I would stand in front of them and say, I don't care. And sorry to my Batesville and Matthews Aurora friends, but I don't care if you buy a fancy casket. I don't care, my Wilbert friends, if you buy a fancy vault. What I care about is that you have an event that helps you say goodbye in a healthy and meaningful way to your loved one and really also honors their life. I had to stop somebody who was planning his own funeral and memorial service, good friend of mine in the community, and he had written his own obituary, but he hadn't planned an event where it was going to be read. And it was a beautiful, just a life story of all the things he loved and all the people he loved. I said, this has to be shared. And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, you cannot allow your family to not share this with the world and help you and help them. They want to honor you and they need to also mourn you. So you can't turn that key and turn that off. And if we don't have those conversations, and you talked about courage earlier, I think as funeral directors, we have to have that heart, compassionate heart, and courage to have those conversations with families. That this
Yeah.
is a grieving process. This can help you.
And in some ways, I almost think like it needs to be a public service announcement, because it's like, you could see like the community almost, or not, it's just general public thinking like it's self-serving for that message to come from a funeral home, but it's important and it's real. And so it's like, how can the profession facilitate that sort of message?
Right.
Right. I think would be very helpful for everyone, not just funeral service, but for all these families like you talked about. It's great advice.
Well, NFDA has their talk of a lifetime, and there's pros and cons to what people think about that program, but it really is about having those conversations. It's about having the talk that involves both our living life and our dead life. And if we don't have those talks, we have these things called dead talks, we educate ourselves. What are we doing about having those dead talks with families? And I think getting out in the community and having the courage to step forward as a provider in your community, no matter what kind of company you are, educating them as to grief, loss, and mourning values. Why is grieving and mourning of value to us? It helps us heal in healthy ways. If we do it in healthy ways, and there's ways that are unhealthy too, right? There's ways that are very unhealthy. I mean, I still have a girlfriend who has her son's cremated remains 10 years later sitting in her home. And I know she's waiting because she doesn't know where she is going to be, and she wants him with her, and she hasn't decided where she's going to be yet. But the mourning continues until I feel you have a permanent placement for someone where you can go to a special place to remember them by. And that special place needs to be, in my opinion, in a cemetery that is endowed, where they will be cared for the rest of their life. No, that is their remains. That's not really who they are. But I worry about all these people that scatter over time and have nothing and no place to go to remember that person by. Now, see, I'm not against scattering, but I'm also not against retaining a percentage of the cremated remains to have them as a permanent placement. So you as a family are all together. I mean, we put my brother's cremated remains in an urn, and he didn't want to be cremated, but we didn't have a choice because he had been gone so long, and transporting them across state lines. And it was a bad situation. Now, we could have done it. My brother and I made a decision that it would be easier for the family if he was cremated, probably, and easier for us. So yeah, we did make a little selfish choice there. I apologized to Mark. I said, yeah, he wanted a walnut casket. He wanted to go in a Wilbert vault. And we didn't quite make that happen, but he did go in a vault. So we got him a really nice urn, and we had his urn there, and we had a whole ceremony at the graveside with all the family present during the holidays. And we had a little reading, and we had a minister friend of his come and talk about him. And we made it very ceremonial. We got out our nice shovels and had the guys bring the earth there. And so we were able to lower him into the urn vault. We had his motorcycle helmet right there with him because it wouldn't fit in a traditional urn, one of the urn vaults. So we had to get a small Wilbert baby vault. And I don't remember what vault company it was. Sorry. It might have been someone else. I think it was, who was the other one? Yeah, well, if I'm in trouble, now I'm in trouble. It was Doric. I'm sorry. Doesn't matter. It was a vault. So Mark went in there. His helmet went in there. We put some keepsakes in there with him. And then we closed and sealed the vault. We remained while the vault was lowered into the earth. And we helped fill that grave. And that was in our family grave area. And he's right next to mom and dad, which is where he wanted to be. So, those are things that are ceremonial that we need to continue to do. And I was talking to somebody the other day that was going to go scattering, and let me talk to you about, ask you some questions. What kind of scattering ceremony you're having? Oh, we're just going to go out in a boat. And, I said, well, what kind of favorite music did your mom have? We sort of talked about that. And what about flowers? And so when we were done, we actually were able to plan. And this was someone I had just met on a trip. We were able to plan a more ceremonial scattering ceremony. So we have to have the courage to do that in our business, Curtis, and step up and do more of it, and keep telling people examples and teaching them how to.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I did a celebrant training a few years ago, just for fun to learn. And I think it was like that a few months later that we were up in Idaho. My like sister-in-law and brother-in-law, their dog had passed away earlier that year, and the dog was cremated. It was a little, like, she was a white lab. And anyway, but we were up in Idaho, and there was this bush near the lake house there that she would sit under all the time. And so they decided, we're going to, they brought their cremated remains, and everyone had the opportunity to go over and take some of them and scatter them in that spot under the bush. And you've got family members who are not dog people over there going through this ceremony and just bawling. And I'm like, how cool is this? Like, just how important ceremony is. It's so meaningful, and just like, it's awesome. I mean, that's a really special memory now that just wouldn't have existed if it weren't for, like you mentioned, just the importance of planning a ceremony of some sort, even just for your little, your dog. So
listen, here at our little ranch in Colorado, we have our little cemetery right next to where Monty and I were married. And we have our lab and our golden that we lost during the pandemic. We have one of our horses there, and we have our 2 kitty cats, our ranch cats, that are there, and they all have markers.
That's so cool.
I know. And we did a little ceremony, and we light them up so they have little lights at night, and then we decorate them for Christmas and the holidays. And it sounds weird, but we mourn because we love. And because we love, we should always mourn in special ways that celebrate and honor the life that was lived, whether it's a special family pet member or it's a human pet member, right? Or human pet member or human pet.
Yeah.
Whether they're pets or humans, we still love them, right? Don't we?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad we recorded this, because I think you've provided some incredible advice, and your stories are amazing, and your success is so cool to hear about, and all that you're doing now. And just, hopefully just this platform can help others know about what's going on with Funeral Women Lead, and your book, Wake Up Calls, is coming out here in a couple months. But it's very much appreciate your time, Lisa. This has been incredible. We'll share this with you if you want to use any of the videos, because you've produced some awesome content here that I think others will really benefit from.
You too, Curtis. I appreciate all your innovation and everything that you've done for our profession. You've really tried to help wake us up, and not just with your beautiful green shirts, but with the things that you do to help funeral homes become more innovative. And you really are one of those good early disruptors in our profession, and we're very grateful for all that you've done too. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Oh, no, so happy to. And I mean, all of our success at Tukios is because of folks like you that gave us a shot. So thanks so much for, believing in us early on with our video product and everything else. But, just thank you, Lisa. And for those that listen, thanks so much for listening to PodCasket. You can, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you can find us. Look forward to the next episode. Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.